The Devil's Staircase. In the remote woods of Tennessee, there's a place known only to the locals as the Devil's Staircase. It's a steep, winding path that cuts through a dense forest, leading to a crumbling, forgotten church at the top of a hill. The church, now a ruin, was once the site of unspeakable rituals and dark ceremonies, long abandoned, but never truly forgotten. The stairs themselves are ancient, worn by time and covered in moss, with an eerie silence that seems to swallow all sound. But the true terror of the Devil's Staircase lies not in what you can see, but in what you feel as you climb. Legend has it that in the early 1900s, a cult of Satan worshippers used the church as their meeting place. They believed the staircase was a gateway to hell, a place where the devil himself would rise if summoned correctly. Villagers would often hear the sounds of chanting and screams echoing through the night, but no one dared to investigate. Those who did were never seen again. One night, a young man named Jacob, curious and skeptical, decided to climb the Devil's Staircase to prove it was just a myth. Armed with nothing but a flashlight and a sense of bravado, he began his ascent. As he climbed, the air grew colder, and a thick fog began to envelop the trees. The silence was deafening, broken only by the crunch of his footsteps on the old stone steps. About halfway up, Jacob began to hear whispers, soft at first, then growing louder. The voices seemed to come from all around him, speaking in a language he couldn't understand. His flashlight flickered and died, plunging him into darkness. Panic set in as he felt a presence behind him, something cold and malevolent. He turned, but there was nothing there, only the oppressive darkness pressing in from all sides. Determined to reach the top, Jacob pressed on, but the whispers turned into screams, the air growing thick with the scent of sulfur. The steps seemed to stretch on forever, each one heavier than the last, as if the very ground was trying to pull him down. When he finally reached the top, the old church loomed before him, its doors hanging open like a gaping maw. He stepped inside, and the temperature dropped to freezing. The interior was in ruins, with broken pews and shattered stained glass. In the center of the room was an altar covered in strange symbols and dried blood. As Jacob approached, the door slammed shut behind him, and the whispers returned, now chanting his name. The ground began to shake, and a deep, guttural growl echoed through the church. Jacob turned to run, but the door wouldn't budge. The growling grew louder, and the altar began to glow with an unholy light. In the darkness, he saw red eyes staring at him from the shadows, and the figure of a horned beast began to take shape. It moved towards him, slow and deliberate, its claws scraping the stone floor. In his final moments, Jacob realized the stories were true. The Devil's Staircase was indeed a gateway, one that he had foolishly opened. The last thing he heard was his own scream, echoing through the night as the darkness swallowed him whole. The next morning, the villagers found the church door wide open, but there was no sign of Jacob, only his flashlight lying on the steps of the Devil's Staircase, flickering on and off. Since that day, no one has dared to climb those stairs. The church remains, a silent sentinel over the cursed path, waiting for the next soul brave or foolish enough to make the climb. The locals warn outsiders to stay away, for once you start the journey up the Devil's Staircase, you may never return.